Jay Perkins is a retired chief fire officer for the Klamath National Forest. His career has spanned over 50 years in fire management. He has managed fires from several thousand acres in size to over 500,000 acres. In retirement, he was a team member that designed and wrote the Community Wildfire Protection Plan for Siskiyou County, and he led the team that developed and wrote the Wairika Area Community Wildfire Protection Plan. For the past 4 years, he has been writing and posting community wildfire protection planning messages on the Wairika Fire Safety Facebook page and sharing the messages through an extensive email list. He served on the board of directors for the Siskiyou Family YMCA. He is currently serving on the Shasta Valley Resource Conservation District Board. And without further ado, here's Jay Perkins.
Not to throw Scott's dad under the bus, Fred, but I will, because he's not here to defend himself. But I ended up on the board of the YMCA, and I ended up as the chair because as I was going under anesthesia when he did some meniscus work about 15 years ago, he said, "You will be the chair of the board." I must have agreed, because when I came out, when I came into recovery, I had a gavel in my hand.
Never piss off a surgeon.
Well, yeah, thank you. I should have learned that. Well, I'm tickled. I'm tickled to see so many people here today. I've become quite passionate about community wildfire protection. That's been kind of the focus of my work for the last 5 or 6 years. I graduated from the Forest Service 15 years ago, but I still find myself engaged in a lot of different things in a lot of different ways. And I think that this one topic is one where maybe based on the experience I've had or reading the papers and the postmortems of all these fires, well, you know what? Each one of us in this room, including myself, there is so much we can do to protect ourselves and not necessarily expect that Wairika Fire Department or CAL FIRE or Siskiyou County OAS are going to come to our rescue. But there's a whole lot of things we can do to prepare our homes and to prepare ourselves. And that's going to be, for the most part, the focus of my presentation. Jami gave me an hour. She said, make sure there's plenty of room for questions, which what I would ask is if you have questions during the presentation, please ask. I have got a boatload of information I'm going to present. I don't want you taking notes, not that I see paper and pencils. But what I do want you to do is, there will be something in here that will apply to your particular instances. Whether it's doing something around your home or getting yourself, whether it's for a wildfire evacuation, but any kind of a disaster response. There'll be a nugget. I'm absolutely confident there'll be a nugget that you'll get out of this. And then I do have a series of handouts, which I've learned after many years of teaching at all different levels internationally and across the country. If you do handouts at the beginning, nobody pays attention. So I'm going to hand them out at the end. So that you will listen, you don't have to find your place on the handouts. And a lot of what I'll be presenting will either A, be somewhat in those handouts, or be accessible on the internet. And I'm going to show you where some of that is as we move along. So I think, without further ado, and I'll apologize, I just had a partial knee replacement 3 weeks ago. I do like to walk and stand when I do presentations, but I'm going to make myself comfortable and sit down, get up, whatever I need to do. But it's not my normal way that I operate. So without further ado, let's talk about community wildfire protection. What? Oh. Preparedness. What is preparedness? Well, basically, it's all those actions and things you need to take in order to get yourself ready for. And we're primarily going to focus on wildfires, because that certainly seems to be something that dominates us right now. But really, a lot of what I'm going to talk about can apply across a myriad disasters. Getting yourselves ready to respond to any kind of a disaster. So, and you know what? I don't know if it'll be in your lifetime or my lifetime, We've had fires knocking on our doors. We will have one come through this community. I think it's inevitable. But I think there's things we can do to make you and your place resilient and make yourself ready to do that. So that's going to be the focus of the presentation, is to get yourselves ready. If you go online and you look at all the myriad sources of information, there are lots. There are absolutely many, many, many. One of them, the Wairika Area Fire Safe Council, we did have a grant from Listos, California, which is the state OES, Office of Emergency Services. And they have a system called the 5 steps for any disaster. And that didn't give everything that I wanted to present today, but it did help give me some background. So I've incorporated some of what the 5 steps are for any disaster from Listos. One of my go-to places is CAL FIRE's readyforwildfire.org. And if there's one site, I'll have these all at my very last slide, I'll have where all these are, but if there's one place I would have you go, it would be to go to readyforwildfire.org. And anything and everything you might want to know, and it'll go into even greater depth than what I'm going to talk about today, is that CAL FIRE site right there. And a lot of what I'm going to be talking about will also be coming from this. As Jami said in my introduction, the Wairika Area Fire Safe Council, we have our own Facebook page called Wairika Fire Safety. And I think this was our 4th or 5th year. We do weekly postings for the community on what to do to get yourselves ready. I think the first 3 years we had 16, and then I added a little bit more about home hardening, which I'll talk about here in a minute. And so we have 18 weeks worth of wildfire preparedness messaging that we do. And so I would encourage you on the Facebook page, if you're Facebookers, is to go into our Wairika Fire Safety, a lot of information. And I also know that the YMCA also posts these messages on their webpage, or on their Facebook page, as do several others. And then lastly, we're going to talk about this towards the end. The County of Siskiyou Office of Emergency Services just unveiled. As a matter of fact, I wish there'd been a little bit more information around this. Brian Shannoni, who's the head of Office of Emergency Services for Siskiyou County, this is their webpage with basically with a ready, set, go. And I'm going to bring that up on the internet also towards the end and let you be able to see that. So also glean information from that. So at the end, what do I want to leave you with? Well, there's 3 things. How to harden your home, and what does that mean? And what are some things that you can do to prepare your home and to make it more resilient to wildfire, the actual structure itself. Secondly is defensible space. And what is defensible space? What's required by law and what's required perhaps by common sense? And then the last thing is to plan for an evacuation. When we did our CWPP, our Community Wildfire Protection Plan for the Wairika area, and also for the county one, we made these our top priorities. And you've all seen all the fuel breaks and all the work that's being done out there. Well, you know what? In a bad wind, those aren't going to do anything. It's going to come back to your home. And are you ready? Will your home survive? And can you evacuate at a good time? So these are our priorities in our Community Wildfire Protection Plan, and that's what I'd like to speak to a bit today. So home hardening has just started to come into, if you will, into the speak for those of us who've been doing this for a number of years. And it's really been born out of a tremendous amount of research, and particularly out of some of these absolutely devastating fires you've all seen and read about over the last 5-6 years. And scientists such as Stephen Quarles or Jack Cohen go in and they do postmortems, if you will. They go in and take a look at this house. Say, why did that house burn? Why is that one still standing? Why did this group burn? Why did that one not burn? And what it's coming down to is called home hardening. There are things you can do to your house that will make it more resilient or more resistant, if you will, to fire spread. It's a big, big deal. And time again, I've got a couple of examples, whether it's from the Camp Fire, the McKinney Fire, it doesn't matter. I even got a picture from the Lahaina Fire from Hawaii. I'm going to talk about that. And why did that one lone home survive? And we've got some clues as to why it did. So home hardening. And as I look across this group, yes, you know, some of these things you might be able to do yourself. Some of them you might need to enlist your neighbors. Others you might need to contract and get the work done. I encourage you to get it done, and so that is home hardening. I have a handout that I will give you at the end from the University of California Cooperative Extension. And this came out in 2021 in their stewardship newsletter that basically distilled down to 7 different items that they viewed as the most important based on their research, are those things that if they were to be done, improve the odds, if you will, or the chances of success, or the odds of your home surviving the passing of a fire. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time going through this, and then, like I said, I have a, I thought I had a handout. Anyway, we may have missed a handout, Jami.
Okay.
That's okay. We will make it available. Number 1 priority: roofs, vents, vegetation. Roofs, vents, vegetation. And I encourage all of you, when you go home today, is to maybe take a look at your house. And when I finish this discussion, and you go home and say, hey, how's my roof going to respond to a sea of embers? What's going to happen to my roof? So we're going to talk about roofs, and there are a lot of options that are good, and there are several that aren't any good. And I think you all being Californians know that shake roofs are no longer. Those are proven to be absolutely no good. And what people are going to are either metal roofs, as you can see in the upper left-hand corner there. Just last week, I finished re-roofing my house with Class A composite roofing, which is also fire resistant. And then lastly, obviously, you can go with some kind of a tile roof if you want. And there's other options, but certainly, and I bring this to your attention because maybe none of you are going to replace your roof, but if you do, I'd like you to think a little bit about what it is that you're going to put on your roof. And by the way, I see you, Dave. And by the way, very, very few homes in this town are going to be immune from some kind of an ember shower. Okay, based on some analytical work that we did, there are very few homes that are going to be immune from a shower. Yes, Dave.
Any comments on the disadvantage of the weight of a tile roof versus some of the other fire resistant?
You know, I don't, and you know, I don't have a comment. And again, it's like, do you peel off your composition roof before you put the new one? It all comes back to Dave, you know, how much weight your structure can hold. So I don't have a comment. I may have an opinion, but I don't have a comment. So you may have the best roof in the world, but are you taking care of it? And this is one of the things I want you to take a look at when you go home. Are your eaves full of leaves? Are your eaves full of needles? Do you have in your roof, in the valleys of your roof, are you keeping those clean? I have to clean mine a couple times a year. I've got a couple of friends who clean theirs out 2 or 3 times a year to keep all that stuff from accumulating on their roofs. Because these are wicks. Yeah, this roofing won't burn, but what about the upper end of this wick? What's up at the upper end of this sea of fuels? So it's something that can be done. Get a neighbor kit. There are several little businesses that would be happy to take care of that. Get a handyman, handy woman, handy whatever, and get some of that work done. Okay. And if you need help, ask. I think many of us would be happy to come in and help. Vents. Vents. You know, vents. They're the avenue. They're the way inside of your house. And what kind of vents do you have on your homes? Are they proper? Are they properly shielded? Do they have at least a minimum of a 1/8 inch grid that'll help to minimize the amount of embers that'll get inside? And whether it's a soffit vent or whether it's a gabled in vent, if you don't know, you should probably at least be finding out, because again, you got to be thinking of what's on the other side of that vent. Your roof, your attic. What's in the attic? What's going to burn in the attic? How's it going to respond to that sea of embers as it comes in through your vent? And there's been tremendous amounts of research on this whole notion of trying to minimize the embers that can get into your house, can get into your crawl space, into your attic. And even though this may be an approved vent, what's at issue is that ember is so small that it'll go out by the time it gets into your attic. Your homes still need to breathe. It's a matter of finding out that right size. And research right now, and as a matter of fact, building code requires 1/8 of an inch, particularly those of us that live up here in the fire country. And the last one is vegetation, and we'll be spending a whole lot of time about vegetation. But I was slow to learn. I'm going to talk about that too a little bit further down. But I was slow to learn about the vegetation that's along my house. And after watching a lot of these fire experiences that are going out, I have pulled out a whole lot of vegetation that's next to my house. And part of it is because it's just a receptor. It's a receptor either for the sparks or for the embers. And and we'll talk about this whole scene a little bit later too, and what's underneath that burning vegetation. I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about vegetation. Decks, number 2. Priority, the 4th thing, decks. Have you ever looked at your deck and looked at how's that going to respond to a fire? Is that going to bring the fire to my house? Is it going to stop? How much stuff do I have on my deck? How much stuff do I have underneath my deck? But that's why this is a second priority, because the research has shown that decks are another, if you will, another conduit for wildfire to reach your house. And so there are, one easy thing to do, relatively easier thing to do, is to keep your deck cleaned off, particularly if you get a fire. And we'll talk about the Genasys project and all that here in a minute, so you can be informed as to what you need to start looking for. But particularly if your concern is to get that deck cleaned off, particularly if you get into a yellow evacuation warning, is to clear that stuff away, because again, it'll be a receptor. Notice the boards. Notice the decking. It runs parallel with the housing. Okay, so again, they found out that the decking that's running perpendicular, all that does is it's a conduit, because the fire will want to pass along. It'll burn, it'll smolder, and work its way towards the house. So if you're going to, I'm not saying you need to go out and change your deck today, by the way, but if you are thinking about that, these are some things to consider with respect to a deck, including this last piece right here should be non-flammable, non-burnable in the event you do have a fire. So again, these are things to think about in the future in the event that you do want to replace your deck, but they're very problematic. The next one is windows. And I suspect most all of us, if not all of us, have dual pane windows. And dual pane windows are absolutely essential in order to withstand a fire. In this picture you see here, you can see this was taken after a fire, and the outer pane cracked because of the heat, but the inner pane withheld, and so fire was unable to enter the house. So as that fire approached and came towards the house, that outer pane broke, but the inner pane held and prevented the fire from entering the house. And also, if you're looking at windows and changing them, you certainly want to look at tempered glass. What do you have around your windows? Vinyl? Is the vinyl reinforced with metal? So anyway, again, this is dual pane, is to survive a fire, but certainly it's an area you want to look at, especially if you're going to be changing them over. Oops. Eaves. I was slow to learn with respect to eaves. My house, they're all boxed in, but I had about a 6-foot place that wasn't boxed in. And I looked at that for probably 20 years until a certain fire, which I'll talk about here in a minute. I'm thinking, oh my gosh. Between the blue jays and a fire, that was just an attractive nuisance, and the mice and everything else. And so I went ahead and boxed that in. What you're trying to avoid are all these little nooks and crannies, places where burnables can accumulate. The ideal would be a metal soffit, of course. But the eaves have certainly proven to be a problem area, and when you walk around your house today, take a look at little tiny holes. Think like a fire, think like an ember. Where could an ember enter? What would it do if it were to land there? And how would your house respond to that ember? And especially eaves are certainly problematic. Oops. There we go. Siding. A lot of siding options. One of them is, I think, most new construction, particularly, we live in a very high fire severity classification, CAL FIRE. And I believe all new homes are built with this cement board now. Just last week, week before last, finished residing my house, and I got rid of the cedar and put up cement board. So again, I'm looking at my house where I live. I live in a very high fire severity. One way in, one way out. It's not ideal. So I'm trying to do what I can do. And this hardy board, if you will, or this cement board is a good option. Metal. A woman who's a member here. She used to come to our Wairika Area Fire Safe Council meetings. She and her husband just resided their whole house 3 or 4 years ago. It's all done in metal. Very, very stylish, very nice looking. Because where they live in Wairika, and I don't know where you all live, but where they live in Wairika, and I remember visiting her several times, and I think, oh my God. It's such a high probability of that area burning. She's right on the edge of town, more or less, and she had neighbors who were less than tidy, if you will. And so she and her husband, grabbed the bull by the horns, and went ahead and changed all their siding out for metal siding. And then, of course, you could go brick, stone, whatever, and that certainly isn't going to burn, and that certainly is an option. You should take a look at that. If you do, as I did before I changed it over, but if you do have a wood siding, you might take a look at that very bottom piece of black, and is it 6 inches above the ground? And if it isn't, you might think about what you could do to either remove that last one or to do something to get that 6 inches above the ground. This 6 inches is just enough, and I have an example of where that helped a home prevent that home was less prone to a fire burning. I have an example here of showing that in a minute. Fences. I was slow to change out my fence until, again, I do a lot of reading, and I realized I had a wooden fence all the way up to my house. And then I saw that quite a number of homes were burning as a result of the fact that the fence would burn, and then that was a conduit right to the house. So I thought 4 or 5 years ago, I changed it out for a metal fence, at least the first couple of sections to get metal in there, so in the event there is a fire, it's not going to burn down the house. This is a biggie. Firewood. 30 feet away from your home. 30 feet away from your home. And all your outbuildings should be at least 30 feet away from your home. And again, that's to reduce the chances of your home burning. So not having firewood, next to your house not only is a fire issue, it makes it very problematic for first responders, for firefighters. I don't know about you, but my woodshed's full of mice and bugs and everything else. And so they're going to look for a place, and I don't want it next to my home. So there's a kind of a secondary reason not to have it. So look at getting your firewood at least 30 feet away from your home. Okay, home hardening. A few things there for you. Now let's talk about defensible space. State of California 2 years ago, well, a long time ago, PRC 4291, and if you live in the urban interface, many of you are aware of the 30 foot and the 100 feet, the requirement by law that you have to have so much clearing done 30 feet from your home and then 100 feet from your home. Well, the state of California finally approved, and it just became, it was just implemented, I think January of last year, is this zone called the no ember zone, or 5 feet from your home. And so that's a new requirement, is how is this first 5 feet out from your home? No burnable material whatsoever. Then you come out to the intermediate zone, which is 30 feet away from your home, and then 100 feet away from your home. So those are the 3 defensible space zones. So the idea of ember resistant zone is you don't want that fire next to your house. And again, this became law, if you will, in California, because again, what's been found is that fires like to creep along and then they get next to the house and it's very problematic. And what they found is that if all the flammable vegetation, putting rocks, bricks, sidewalk around your home, is a wonderful barrier against fire. I've got a couple of examples coming up here in a second. So here's an extreme example of a home with a 5 foot, with not just a sidewalk, but also we have this rockway that's right adjacent to the building. Absolutely nothing burnable up against the home, nothing. And this is taken from research done on a home that was burnt at a big laboratory, that again underscores what happens when if you don't have appropriate, if this isn't this 0 to 5, if you've got burnable materials, what's going to happen? And how easy it is to, again, be a conduit to your house. Whereas this one here, it's hard to see in this picture, but it's got rock all the way around it. So there's nothing for that fire to burn to. Here's what I was talking about. Hopefully, none of us have this kind of an example. That's very problematic, is having all this debris, vegetation, and whatnot right next to your house, because that's just an invitation for your house to burn. Here's an example of a home that survived with that 6 feet up above and reduced vegetation or no vegetation. So the fire, it may have crawled, there might have been a little bit of organic material, but it basically saved that home. It saved that home. 5 to 30 feet. What are you going to do out there? Well, you still want to reduce the amount of vegetation you have. And everything I read too, talks about obviously keeping things mowed, and hopefully we're all very serious mowers. I could no longer afford grass around my house because my well couldn't support it. So I just took my grass out, except for one little spot. My wife said, you can't have that last little spot. So I got one little piece of green left. And the rest of it is bare soil with some native plants and little pockets that we've planted around. Again, designed around that notion of a reduced, clean zone, a green clean zone, which is the 30 feet. So in this 50 to 30 feet zone, you may want pockets of trees. You don't want continuous vegetation at all. You want to break that up. And then this is zone 3, though 30 feet to 100 feet, getting stuff spaced out, doing some pruning. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in here, but one thing that, depending upon where you live, whether it's urban or rural, is getting rid of these the vegetation underneath these trees, thin it out, get rid of it so that the tree will be basically alone, the vegetation. So if a fire were to come, it's going to burn underneath. So here's kind of a summary of what we just talked about for defensible space, keeping your roof clear of leaves and needles, your wood pile at least 30 feet away, and basically what that might look like as you were designed, if you were to look at your defensible space zones around your home. I just threw this in here just to cause you to reflect a little bit about some of the things we've talked about. You take a look at this. You take a look at this picture, and some of it is good, some of it is not good. And why is this house why would this house be vulnerable to fire? And some of it is pretty obvious. Hopefully everybody has an appropriate cap on their chimney, so you're not throwing sparks out. As I mentioned before, keeping everything clean, getting rid of all the needles and whatnot. One thing I didn't say about the eaves, I have a couple of pictures from, I don't have them in this, from the campfire where the eave troughs were plastic. And you can just imagine what those plastic eave troughs did. They melted, but they also burned, and it's probably contributed to the loss of that home. Okay, home hardening, defensible space. Talk about evacuation. You know, at the end of the day, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit you can do for hardening your home, for doing some defensible space work. But at the end of the day, can you evacuate? Can you get out of your home? Are you ready to leave? Do you know what you're going to do? And I'm going to, one of my handouts is a copy of a plan I put together for my home about 7 or 8 years ago, blanked out so you can take a look at it as an example, help you think through all the things that you need to do in order to safely effect an evacuation from your home. Many of us think, and my wife has accused me of this, you're going to stay how long, dear? And I said, well, as long as necessary. But at the end of the day, and even when we evacuated half of Wairika last year, there are time and time again of examples of people that waited way too long. So if you are at all concerned or think you need the time, I would heed this advice: go early, but also know where you're going to go. And I just was reading with the Lahaina again, as something close to this time horizon where people didn't know where to go. Everybody in this room should know where they're going in the event of an evacuation. You should know that right now. If you're going to pull up, load your car, where are you going? And what are you going to do? Who are you going to contact? And if nothing else, I would encourage you to think about that when you go home today and say, where am I going to go? Motels may be full of CAL FIRE and Fed Fire firefighters. Could be full of travelers. So where are you going to go? What are you going to do? As you evacuate, as you get ready to leave your home, there's a host of things that you can do to get your home better set for surviving a fire. And here's just a handful of things you might want to consider. Certainly making sure your windows are closed is huge, but certainly it might be worth your time to make sure your windows are all closed. Shutting off the gas. Here's one: leave your lights on so firefighters can see your house under smoky conditions. That's one that didn't occur to me until I read this a number of years ago about leaving the lights on, because I want to increase the odds that the firefighters are going to be successful in the event that they need to effect an attack on my house. Outside the home, there are a whole host of things that can be done. My wife and I went on vacation, and you can, if you want, take a quick perusal of that. When we went off on vacation, my mom was still living with us, and then my sister there. Before I left, I made sure that all the hoses were hooked up to the faucets. I made sure that there was an extension ladder leaning against the house on the outside so the firefighters could find it. And I put a 5-gallon bucket full of water in every corner of my house and the barn, so that when I left, my sisters could just focus on my mom if need be, because the smoke was thick and we didn't know what was going to go on. This might have been when the mill fire, Mill, McKinney, and what was the other end fire?
Mountain.
What's that?
The mountain.
Mountain, thank you. Were going on. So at the end of the day, it's increase the odds that your home is going to be, number one, is going to survive, but those that are going to be working on your home can do this safely and effectively and quickly. So I'm going to do whatever I can. And everybody in this room's read about, oh, my poor kitty, I don't know where it is, and runs back, and we have people who lose their lives because they didn't have their animals contained. They didn't know. there are, we can get ready. There's plenty of opportunity to get yourselves ready, to get your animals ready, to get the food that you need. That same time I was talking about, we had horses on our property, and we were going to be gone. I didn't want my sisters to worry about it. So before we left, my wife put our phone number on the hooves of all the horses. In the event that they broke out, at least they would know where to call. So, in that respect, we made sure that our animals go early. There's way too many examples of too many vehicles choked on too narrow of roads. Whether it's the campfire, whether it was Lahane, it doesn't matter where it is. And then it gets worsened by the fact that because people can't move their cars, they abandon their cars. And then that just aggravates the whole situation. And as many of you may have recalled at the campfire up on Paradise, bulldozer went right through the middle of the road to move all those cars out of the way so that the initial responders could get in there. So go early, please, go early. All right, go early. So have any of you heard of Ready Siskiyou by chance? Yeah, I told that to Brian. I said, I don't know how well you're talking about Ready Siskiyou. So I'm going to expose you to this, Ready Siskiyou. I'm going to jump on the internet right now if this works. And we're going to go to the Siskiyou County OES page, where, like I said, they just rolled out Ready Siskiyou about 6-8 weeks ago. I had hoped for some kind of more information on what their expectations are. But this is right on when you go into the Siskiyou County OES page, you'll see Ready Siskiyou over here on a pull down, and if you click on it, this is what you'll get. And this is to help the citizens of Siskiyou County effect a more organized and safe evacuation if need be. So we're going to go right here, and we're going to start with the get ready. So what we're going to do is, how many of you have heard of Genasys? How many of you have heard of ZONEHAVEN? Okay, well, ZONEHAVEN is no longer, it's now called Genasys. And it's called the Genasys Project. And hey Jamie, what's the address here at the line?
950.
I'm sorry, say that again?
950 East Foot.
950.
I'm sorry, 350.
Sorry.
It found you, Jay.
350.
Oh, it did. It found me. Good.
It just-
Well, sometimes I end up in Seattle.
Yeah.
I'm in Seattle. I'm right here.
Yeah.
So good. So it found me. All right. So when you open it up, it will. Thank you, Jill.
Yeah.
It will take you to where you are, supposedly, if you've asked it to. So this is Genasys Protect. Used to be called ZONEHAVEN. Don't ask, I don't know. I don't know if it's better software, but I strongly encourage, and if I could, I would make you download this on your smartphones, because this is going to help you in determining what kind of, how prepared we are with evacuation. So let's just as a real quick, you can see over here, this is the Elliott fire, and there are three zones here that are under a evacuate now order. Okay, there are a whole host of them that are now yellow, which means they're under a warning. And I can't sit here and say you need to leave at a yellow. You have to figure that out on your own. But I would certainly have you take a look in the mirror when you do this and say, can I get out of here in time? Is this a good opportunity for me? This is the evacuation warning. And these are the things I need to do. And we'll talk a little bit when I hand out my plan. These are the things I should do when I have this evacuation warning. I need to get ready. I need to make sure that everything is, all my ducks are in a line, are in a row. And this Genasys Protect is a great way to go with that.
Is CodeRed still viable?
There we go, right there, CodeRed. Who asked the question? Thank you. So here's CodeRed. How many of you are signed up for CodeRed? Okay, not everybody. So everybody, I strongly encourage you to get signed up with CodeRed. Because what CodeRed will do is it will alert you to the fact that there's a fire in your proximity. Okay? And it'll alert you, and I would even suggest that you head over to Genasys Protect and just see exactly where the fire is, what's going on, and to help inform the decision that you're ultimately going to make. So under the Get Ready set, which is process is download Genasys, download CodeRed, and I've got some examples of some emergency supply lists. You should, yes.
What about watch duty?
I will do that at the very end. Great question, thank you. I knew you were gonna ask that question, so I thought I would put it on here. I know that question's gonna get asked. If you don't have your go bag and your supply kits, do that this week. And my mom, bless her soul, she passed away 2 years ago, and I was trying to get her used to living out here in the arid west and fire country. And you know, we'd be getting towards the end of the fire season, and I'd look to where we had, in our front hall closet, where we had all the suitcases and everything to go, and my mom's isn't there, where'd it go? She said, well, I needed some underwear. I had to get it out of my go bag. I said, no, Mom, go buy extra underwear, please. That go bag, I want it to be there all the time, because it's not just fire we want to worry about. I want to have that go bag so that when Ann and Dave Herfindahl know that I'm going to show up at their house, they don't have to take care of me for 3 days. Okay, so keep that go bag and keep your emergency supply list. Get those done before we get into the warning stage. Yes.
Can I mention something here?
Yes.
I had friends who had their go bag. They had like 7 days worth of medications in there, so they could just grab it and go.
Yes.
But the fire lasted longer than that, and they ran out of medications, and their prescriptions would not be refilled because they were like on 90-day fills, so all their other pills were at home.
Yes.
And they wouldn't refill their medications. So don't just put a week in there, take the whole lot with you.
And 2 quick stories. One is sometimes you have to call your doctor and have your doctor reinitiate the prescription. And secondly, we took
Get hold of them, yeah.
we took an evacuee from Lake Shastina 2 years ago when the mill fire took off. And matter of fact, she didn't even know what was going on until someone knocked on her door and said, Marie, you need to leave now. And so she left with the clothes on her back. She ended up in our house for 4 days. Fortunately, a few contacts with CHP and whatnot, but we were able to get through the blockade and get to her house for her to get her medication so she could, but she speaks English and Spanish, and it was very problematic, but yes, that's, the medication, thank you for that. That's a very important consideration.
Jay?
Yes.
Yeah, one more comment on medication. Lots of times government, county, or public health, or OES can get extra medication for you and get around that if we know what you're taking. What's hard for us in shelters is if you come in and don't know the name and the dosage and just say, well, I take a little white pill for my heart or a little yellow pill, we're going help, we don't know what to do. So in addition to taking more, I think that's great, but have the name of it and the dosage, then we can get it for you. We can go through the blockade of the bureaucracy.
Thank you.
That's why I think it's important to have whatever medication and dosage you take on your phone.
Yes, absolutely, that it's online, yes. How many here could sit down and go home and take a piece of paper and say, here are the 7 medicines I take, and here's the dosage? I would challenge, there's probably 1 or 2, and I bet you the majority of you couldn't do that. I'm not sure I could.
Mine's in my purse.
Yeah.
So when you get the yellow ZONEHAVEN, the Genasys, and your zone is yellow, that's when you need to be thinking about getting your car packed. I know my wife 3 weeks ago, she was very nervous because we didn't have our truck. I forget, our truck was getting worked on, and we had 3 horses in the field. And she said, "Who's going to take the horses?" Because usually You know, she likes to have the horse trailer hooked up to the truck so that if we need to take the horses, they're ready to go. We weren't yellow, but she was already thinking about, what am I gonna do? I need to get these horses out. So I appreciated the fact that she did that. So, warning, is it inevitable? Not necessarily, but it certainly is a time for you to be contemplating, I need to maybe start thinking about leaving if I need to, because if I get the go order, I wanna be able to go. I wanna be able to go in a hurry. Okay. All right. Home hardening. Some things you can do, things you can get your neighbors to do, your grandkids, hire somebody to do it. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit. And some of the examples I gave you are things that if you're contemplating needing to replace windows, or you have siding issues, you're going to do something with your eaves, your soffits, whatever, are things to be thinking about. But there are certainly things you could do and you should do right now, like cleaning off your eaves, maybe going with a little thing of caulk and making sure you have no gaps around your windows, etc., etc. Low-hanging fruit, things that can get done. Defensible space. I've been working for 3 years on my own home, so I know it's not going to happen overnight. But as I mentioned before, I ripped out all the vegetation proximate to my house. I'm currently working on what am I going to do for that 4 to 5 foot buffer adjacent to the house. I've got it all scraped away, I've got it all down to dirt, but I don't have anything on top of it yet.
What do you suggest about, the big tanks, propane tanks?
Well, ideally it shouldn't be too close to your home.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things you do need to do is to get that sucker turned off, or if someone's helping you to evacuate, is to make sure you get it turned off. Those are very problematic, without a doubt. So, in closing, a few closing thoughts. Lahaina. Everybody saw this picture, right? And I scratched my head and I'm going, wow. You look at this sea of devastation, and there's one house that survived. And so I waited long enough and went deep enough into the research to see what may have happened and what is it that, why was that house able to survive? And two things that homeowner had done, not thinking about fire. When they bought this home 10, 12 years ago, it was in pretty shabby shape. And they did two things that probably helped prevent their house from burning. And this is why I want to underscore the importance of what it is we're talking about. One thing they did, metal roof. They put a metal roof on that house. Second thing they did, they had a ring of rock 3 feet around their home. And they didn't do it for fire, they did it for runoff of the rain. Okay, that's why they did it. But that's probably one of the things that helped that home improve its odds of being able to survive that fire. So there's that 0 to 5, and there's the roof. Was there some dumb luck that played into that? Probably. Campfire. I think we've all have seen a lot about the campfire. The thing I want to underscore with this picture is, and this struck me when I read this article in the Los Angeles Times about 3 or 4 years ago, is that the CAL FIRE battalion chief was talking about what his findings were when he saw all these homes burned up in Paradise. And I want you to take a look at and pay attention to the fact that, look, all the trees are still standing, they're not burned. So why did these homes burn? And again, it has to do with the embers. It has to do with the embers. Where are those embers going to light? So it wasn't actual impingement of the flames against those structures, but rather were those homes a receptive bed for those embers. McKinney fire, I think, oops, I don't know why that didn't work. The McKinney fire, I think some of you may have had to evacuate last year. The upper half of Wairika had to evacuate. The McKinney fire was about as close as we've had of a fire rolling over the ridge coming down to us. my very opening slide that showed a picture of the motel north end of town with that wall of flames coming down, that was the Badger Fire. So certainly people in the far northern end of town had to evacuate. This car fire in 2018 was took care of any arrogance or thinking I knew a lot more than I really did. But when I saw the car fire outside of Reading roar up from the Trinity, from the Whiskey Town all the way to the western edge of Reading, at the ferocity that it did, as quickly as it did, and as deadly as it did, that was my wake-up moment. When I became even more passionate about what are we doing, what can we do to help people be to be safer. So, in closing, I was asked about watch duty, so let's just take a real quick look here at watch duty. If you don't have watch duty has, I think they've improved quite a bit. I would encourage you, if you don't have watch duty, download it. Boy, what a great, there's a tremendous amount of information, and you can set up notifications, you can be updated on fires in your area. My wife's phone goes off all the time. I'm saying, why do you care about fires in someone's bar? And she does. But you can see, for example, here, the head fire, the one that was just outside of, is pretty close to 100% contained. Elliott Fire was the one we looked at, where they still had a few mandatory evacuations. So certainly watch duty is a great place to go. So again, ready for wildfire, CAL FIRE, go there. County OES, if you don't have CodeRed or the Genasys Protect, ZONEHAVEN Aware, just get on to the county webpage and go to County OES, and you'll be able to get CodeRed and the Genasys Protect. I mentioned our Facebook project, our Facebook posting. 211 NorCal, new program about 3 or 4 years ago. If you want more information, you can go to 211 NorCal. And then lastly, we have Listos, California, as I mentioned before, the state OES. So without further ado, let's hand out some of this stuff here, Jamie.
Great.
And while I'm handing, well here. So a couple of things I'm handing out are just some checklists, some things for you to take a look at, things you can look and see, are you ready? Are there things that you can do? Is there low-hanging fruit? I talked about a wildfire evacuation checklist. Thank you. I downloaded a wildfire evacuation checklist for you, a checklist of things for you to do and to have ready to go. On my go bag at home, I have 4 ribbons attached to that with wording like, don't forget medication, don't forget mom's jewelry, don't forget this, so that I don't forget. In the event I grab my go bag, if I have time, I can do that. The rest of these things, I'll have Jamie hand out here in a minute. The other thing I have handed out for you is also some low-cost retrofit. Some things you can do around your home that aren't going to cost you an arm and a leg. As I said, just clean out your eaves, etc. And then the last thing, let's hand out this. Let me just talk about this real quickly. What's that, Joan?
Cleaning out your eaves. Leaf guard is plastic and it fits up over your gutters. So, what's that?
Well, I'm not so sure. It depends on what happens with that leaf guard. You know, are your leaves at all accumulating on that? And I don't have an opinion on that, Joan. And thank you for the question, because I do want to find out about that, because I had a similar thought. The last thing that's being handed out is, when I started on this journey about 8 years ago, trying to put an emergency preparedness plan together for my family, I could not find a place to go. And so I bootlegged this, bringing a whole lot of different information together, and I want to share it with you. To use it as you wish, and if you like a copy of this as a Word document, just shoot me an email, and I'd be happy to share it, and you can use it to copy, but you'll notice, even though my mom isn't with us anymore, I left her in there as a means to have a discussion about somebody that you may have to take care of. Okay? And also, we don't have horses anymore, but if you do have large animals, I left that in there as a kind of as a tickler. And I even tried to adapt it to what I need to do if there's an evacuation warning and if there's an evacuation order, and things that I would want us to try and do. I have a list for the go bags in here, and what I don't have in here is I didn't put the map to my son and daughter-in-law's house, because I don't want all of you showing up to my son and daughter-in-law's house.
Well, why not?
Well, they may not want you to. But I have a map on there. Part of that was not so much for us as it might be for visitors or my sisters or whatever. So it's pretty much a comprehensive
Sir,
thing. Yes.
question. The banks here that have the safe deposit boxes, do you know if they are fireproof?
I don't.
Because I checked reminders and they didn't know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if your important papers are at safe deposit box, and it burns,
In the weed fire, people's home safes
Here's
burned and burned up the money inside.
here are my important papers. Here are my important papers right here. I keep them with me. I've got my will. I've got my passport. I got everything right here. I know where it is. I keep it with me. And my wife knows where it is. So I pretty much keep stuff handy so that I have it if I need it.
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Yes.
Jay, what do private individuals do when their property is surrounded by Forest Service, Conservancy, littered with natural debris?
You got to petition them.
Oh,
Yeah, absolutely. I know.
we have.
I know. It's very problematic, and we tried to address that with our countywide community wildfire protection plan, and it's very, very difficult, Tom. I know that.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
I
All right.
didn't think you could answer it properly, but I thought, I'll try.
All right, Jill, did I give you enough time? 2 minutes?
Yeah. And I want to just, while she's coming up, I just want to say the one with the stoplights, the green and go, the other, I don't have that handout.
No, the one I sent you was the, I thought I.
But I just looked in my email, so I was just going to say, if you email it to me right now while Jill's talking, I can go print them right now. Sorry, Jill.
No worries. Hello everyone. I just recently started a position with Pacific Power. I'm the regional business manager. So Pacific Power serves in California, Modoc County, Siskiyou County, and Del Norte County. My role is business account relations, customer relations, public relations, a little bit of everything. So some of you may have known Todd Andrus. He's still with us. He's in Klamath Falls. He's focusing now just on Klamath County and Lake County. Some of you may have worked with Monty Mendenhall in the past as well. So I'm kind of combining both of those roles, and I'm specifically focused on California. So I just wanted to talk about a couple things. Just one more thing for you folks to download, the Pacific Power app. There's an app on your phone. I'm just assuming that you all are customers. So you can download the app on your phone. You can log into your account. You can see where there are outages. You can sign up for alerts. So you can sign up for text alerts, you can sign up for email alerts on the app. You can also sign up online if you log into your Pacific Power account online. But the app on your phone is pretty handy. So real quick, I wanted to talk about elevated fire risk settings on our lines. So some of you may have noticed here in our fire season, which it's the definition of fire season keeps kind of growing and shrinking and growing, and more growing than shrinking. But during elevated fire risk season, which it's determined by a number of things weather-wise, right? So, low humidities, high winds, high heat, etc., the amount of fuels, vegetation in the area. We have to now, as regulated by the California PUC, we have to change the settings on our lines. So what you may have previously experienced as like a flicker or a little brown or a little oops, it went off and now it's back on. Now what's happening is your power goes out. And sometimes it's out for an hour or 2 hours. And this is what happens during this season. And the reason it happens is because we have to, as a power company, if anything trips the line, so we've had some things recently in Wairika, I think like 3 or 4 weeks ago, a squirrel got stuck in one of the transformers on North Oregon Street, fried the squirrel, and it shut down about 1,100 customers in Wairika for about, I think 6 hours, maybe 8 hours. It was off for a while, right? So the reason is when that happens, the entire line from the start to the finish has to be patrolled by a person visually to make sure that nothing's down, nothing's gonna spark, nothing's gonna cause a fire, cause another fire, or make an existing fire worse. So that's the reason for these outages during this fire season, and once we get to a point where the weather is cooperating and we can go back to the, you know, just a little dimmer or a little flicker, that's what we'll do. But in the meantime, that app will help you to know like where the outage is, how long we're predicting for it to be out, etc. And then you'll also receive alerts on planned outages because we are replacing equipment on a regular basis to improve the fire resiliency of our poles and our lines. So that's that little blurb, if you didn't know about that already. The second blurb I wanted to share with you is that we've had an incident, I guess, that the company has never seen before. And I just wanted to share, this is something that we really haven't thought about in the past, but it's something that could happen. So the Smith River Complex fires are burning over in Del Norte County. The fire came together with our 2 transmission lines that feed the city of Crescent City right in the middle of that complex. And we had to make the decision before our structures were damaged by the fire and before our structures or our lines could be downed and potentially make the fire worse or cause a second fire, etc. We had to make the decision to de-energize those lines. And what that meant is we had about 24 hours to give the communities of Del Norte County, specifically Crescent City, the large businesses, the prison, the hospital, we're gonna be shutting your power off in X amount of hours. And none of those folks were under evacuation order. None of them could see the fire. A lot of them couldn't even smell the fire. They had no idea. But because our lines were threatened and posed a threat, we had to de-energize. So in that situation, we had about 9,000 meters, 12,000 residents without power for some of them almost 7 days. So thinking about yourself and where you live and your community and having an idea of, you know, the lines that surround you and being prepared, not just for an evacuation, but potentially a power outage that lasts more than 8 hours. You know, what do you have in your freezer? What do you have in your fridge? Do you have ice chests? Do you have a generator? Does your generator work? Do you have gas? Have you checked the oil? Do you have the right power cord that you need? You know, you can't just use a regular old extension cord on your generator. You need yeah. Anyway, so all of those things are things to think about living in this beautiful place that we live, because we are rural and we do have these things, and then these events are happening more often. I am proud to say that within a week's time, we restored 7 substations with power on generators, and they're still running on generators because the fire threat is still enough that we cannot re-energize our lines. We're hoping to bring them back up, fingers crossed, soon. But at this point in time, we do have folks back on power, and we were able to do that in a relatively short period of time, and that's something to our knowledge that's never been done before. So that's all I have. I'm happy to answer questions, and I know it's past noon, so yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that because I'm on oxygen,
Yes.
I bought an indoor generator
Yes.
for my oxygen, so if you have anybody that's on oxygen, that's a really good buy,
Yeah.
because it saved me several times.
Yes. So that's one of the things that we reiterate to our customers. Like, if you have medical devices that need power, consider having a backup power supply. We were able to, before we got the substations running, we were able to supply individual households with medical needs, individual generators to operate that equipment.
So do you do that if we just called and we bring you out?
We had folks calling a customer service center, and it it was quite a process to get them deployed, but once we sort of got it figured out, so we're writing a book with this particular incident on how to handle this type of situation, and so I think we have a pretty good plan in place if and when it should happen again. But yeah, I would have Pacific Power's app on your phone. I would have their phone number programmed into your phone. Yeah, it's important. So, and please, if that's the other thing that I don't know. I've lived in a rural area my entire life. Usually when the power goes out, I just think, the power's out. It'll come back on. I never call. I never report an outage. I can't remember the last time I've ever reported an outage because you think somebody else is going to, right? Not always the case. So please feel free to report the outage so that we know, so that we can take the right steps to fix it. So, any other questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Jamie.
Hey, Joe, that app didn't tell me it was a squirrel.
I
I tried to figure out why we were without power for 6 hours.
Yeah, that's another thing I didn't know, but wildlife is actually one of our biggest threats to
At least it wasn't spotted out.
It was not, no.
Okay, well, I want to say thank you so much, Jill, and thank you, Jay. Can we give them, since your hands are full, maybe you can't clap, but let's say thank you.